Heartland Daily. Gender activists push to bar anthropologists from identifying human remains as male or female. Okay, this is where we're at now. I'm telling you, you're just slippery slope. It's like a slip and slide down. Do you see this now? This is where the gender debate going is. Now the anthropologists can't do their job because it's offensive to somebody. I mean, do you really? Is this happening for real, or am I in some type of alternate underworld where this is going on? Let's read, shall we? A new school of thought within archaeology is pushing scientists to think twice about assigning gender to ancient human remains. I just can't even. It is possible to determine whether a skeleton is from a biological male or female using objective observations. Of course it is. Of course it is. Based on the size and shape of bones. Criminal forensic detectives, for example, do it frequently in their line of work. So is that next? Are the criminal forensic detectives not going to be able to properly identify human remains? Where is this going that works out in a beneficial way for society? This lack of facts and attention to facts. Gender activists argue scientists cannot know how an ancient individual identified themselves. Well, let me tell you, ancient individuals weren't thinking about stuff like this. They were thinking about survival. They were thinking about survival. They weren't sitting around the table hunting and gathering and saying, well, how do you identify? That is a conversation that happens among the privileged. Okay? Let's be real. The article's too good. We're going to go on. University of Kansas Associate Professor Jennifer Raff suggested scientists cannot know the gender of a 9,000-year-old biologically Peruvian hunter because they don't know whether the hunter identified as male or female. A duality concept, she says, was imposed by Christian colonizers. She thinks, let's get this woman to sit here. She thinks that a 9,000-year-old Peruvian hunter was sitting around contemplating their gender identity. Can you make stuff up that's more batshit crazy than this? Please, I invite you. Put it in the chat. You got something crazier than this? Put it in the chat. I'll cover it. Now, what's interesting here, I found in the second page, there was a Professor Elizabeth Weiss, and this is important to me. She weighed in, and she noted that applying biological sex to remains often helps dispel myths detrimental to women. This is interesting. Some early anthropologists sometimes mistook some robust female skeletons as male skeletons, particularly in these certain collections. This reinforced false stereotypes that females were not as hardworking as males. So I saw that and I said, again, you got women getting the short end of the stick in this situation. Because you can't call a man and a woman, who seems to be suffering the most? These biological women. Now they can't even get proper credit for the way they lived, for the way they worked, for the duties they performed successfully back X amount of years ago. Fast forward to 2022 and people are taking their honors, Woman of the Year, taking their trophies, taking the privilege of breastfeeding, turn it into chest feeding, all this nonsense. Are you awake yet, ladies? Honestly, are you awake? I know you may be expecting somebody else to lead this charge, but it's going to be you. You, in this conversation, women are getting the short end of the stick over and over and over and over again. And there's a passivity that I see in women with respect to this. I don't know if you're afraid. I don't know what it is. You can't be that worried about getting canceled. Everybody and their mother gets canceled. It's almost like a badge of honor now. If you don't get canceled, it just means you're not saying anything important. So wake up. Speak up. You see this nonsense? This is where it's going. This is we can no longer act like this is just a live and let live discussion because the crazies are taking over, okay? And it's happening at high levels of the Biden administration. We did a video the other day of Rachel Levine talking about the puberty blockers and normalizing all of these things for children, okay? So this is a serious time. It requires serious, vocal people. Women lead the charge. If you don't expect somebody else to, and then suffer the consequences.
You know, if you read the writing on the wall, we are headed towards a collapse. One of the things, I'm not a historian, but one of the things you hear about often is that before civilizations collapse, they become obsessed with sex, race, ethnicity, so Camille Paglia, who, I don't know if I'm saying her last name right. I think she's brilliant. I don't agree with everything she says, but very smart lady, gave a talk. Lesson from history, transgender mania is a sign of cultural collapse. She argues that from the Greeks to the Romans to now, that homosexuality, gender fluidity, etc. are what a culture ends up becoming right before its downfall. The downfall is brought on by cultures around that are more rigid in gender roles. And it's like we are becoming so obsessed with this nonsense. It's like you said the other day, the military isn't prepared. We're not prepared. People aren't prepared. They don't know what's going on around them. They don't understand things. And it really does feel like we're headed towards a collapse.
The question I think really becomes, is it intentional though? Because if it's not I mean, you would have to be so profoundly inept. It's too organized. The message is, there's too much collusion in the messaging. Now we're talking about eating bugs, and people are increasingly becoming more and more unhealthy. It's at every level of society, and we've been covering every aspect of that, whether it's the COVID mania and having people not look at each other in the eye anymore, whether it's eating bugs, whether it's, you're a racist, you're a homophobe, you're a bigot without even having a conversation with somebody anymore, a woke military. You add all this together, it looks like there's a strategy here, is all I'm saying. And again, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you wanted to, I ask you again, and I'm going to ask you over and over again, if you wanted to actively destroy a country, what would you do differently? Not much. So if you are invested in this country, if you want a healthy, happy, safe family, if you're invested in your own health, if you're invested in your children's education, if you're invested in a common and shared humanity and respectful discourse, if you're invested in facts and you want things like male and female to not become, subjective floating clouds in the sky, speak up. It's now or never. Speak up. Get into, little groups in your community, have those discussions. You are an empowered citizen. You don't have to lie down and take all this. If you like the short clip, you can catch another one here, or you can catch the full episode right here.